As Zionist Israel pushes on and orders half of Gaza to be abandoned, forcing over 1 million people to leave their homes. The second Nakba. That is what we've announced. What this means is quite simple. It is another push towards the annihilation of Palestine. Some may say then, why is this happening? Some may say then, in face of over 300,000 reservists as well as American aircraft carriers, why are some happy to die at home rather than one? That is simple. When a man has nothing to lose, they have nothing to fear. And for the case of many in Gaza and the West Bank, they have nothing to lose, nowhere to go, and no future. So, for the sake of the memories of those who died, let's all take a moment of silence. Those who have been the victims of this bloodshed need memories. Think about the innocent people who are about to die or be displaced. People are going to lose a lot in the upcoming issues. People are going to lose more and more as time goes on. Bloodshed will happen. More displacement will happen. Ultimately, more death and the cycle of death itself will continue. And the issue surrounding this, as I said already, nowhere to go. That is because even if they surrender, even if they back down, even if they abandon Hamas and the other Palestinian governments, they have nowhere to go. Israel themselves will not accept them. They will be rejected, never be accepted. And that is what this is going to be about. And for the sake of those who have died, let us all have a minute of silence. سالما منعما وغانما مكرما سالما منعما وغانما مكرما. And with that, let's get into the main deal behind the video. And that is the concept of a Jewish state and citizenship. How Arabs are not equals and eternal second and first class citizens. I'm sorry for the somber tone for the very start of this, but things are taking a very bad turn in terms of relation to the active events ongoing. And sorry about that. Discourse is active. I'm not going to turn it off. Yes, as I say. The Nakba. The Nakba is an important period or term in terms of the Palestinian sense. It is seen as the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which was caused by Zionism and Israel. As said by Al Jazeera, between 1947 and 1949, at least 750 Palestinians from a 1.2 million population were made refugees beyond the borders of the state. Zionist forces have taken more than 78% of historic Palestine, ethnically cleansed and destroyed about 530 villages and cities, killed more than 15,000 Palestinians, and a series of mass atrocities, including more than 70 massacres. Although May 15th, 1948 became the official day for the commemoration of Nakba, armed Zionist groups have launched the process of displacement of Palestinians much earlier. In fact, by May 15th, half of the total number of Palestinian refugees has already been forcibly expelled from the country. As for why it's May 15th, as said here, the British occupation authorities had announced that they were to be ending their mandate in Palestine on the eve of May 15th, 1948. That would mean either one of two things. One, they'd be restoring Palestine to Palestinians, or two, concession to Zionism. 8 hours earlier, David, who became Israel's first prime minister, announced that the Zionist leaders called a declaration of independence in Tel Aviv. The British mandate ended at midnight on May 15th. The Israeli state came to being. Palestinians commemorated the national tragedy of losing a homeland in an unofficial way for many decades. But in 1998, the former president of the Palestinian Authority declared May 15th National Day for Remembrance, and on the 50th year since the Nakba. Israel celebrates this day as a state of independence. Needless to say, Nakba and Zionist actions are interrelated. And that is why what we are about to cover specifically might be more traumatic for some and more harsh of reality for some also. Because the reality of what is happening is just a continuation of trends going back for years. And something which I don't see having a good conclusion. Australia itself, not only is Zionists persecuting and potentially leading up to a new ethnic cleansing within Palestine itself, but within Australia itself, New South Wales Labour and New South Wales Police, according to Green Left Weekly, is actively persecuting Palestinian organisations. This is an interesting notification because it highlights the suppression of activism. And this is also an interesting study note because this is because, for example, this statement here is an anti-Zionist statement and not the anti-Semitic one yet. Anti-Semitism has been used as a clause to have things banned. For example, as I said, ours is a struggle against the state of Israel, not against Jewish people, many of whom oppose Zionism, and who have a long history of being part of a movement for a free Palestine. It said anyone wishing to express anti-Semitic views is not welcome at their protests. And I think that's an admirable feat. Anti-Zionist is not anti-Semitic, as I said in part 1. In Australia, the vote for recognition within Parliament with a constitutionally recognised voice was rejected. This highlights the nature of settler colonialism. And while, yes, of course, some may say it's a different issue than this, it's not really the case necessarily because there's a lot of other factors in play here, especially in regards to what the No campaign was doing, where they were essentially engaging in vilification of indigenous peoples. What we see is, in relation to Palestine and Israel, is vilification of Palestinians and Arabs. What we saw in this campaign, for example, was clearly a case of vilification of activists supporting First Nations peoples and of First Nations peoples themselves by spreading lies and misinformation. So there's an interesting dynamic about settler colonialism and their inability to fix the injustices they caused. And this is where it gets interesting as a result. Because then we have saying this, for example, which is actually quite a good thing to comment on in direct relation to Israel. For example, it says here, yet holding elections is not enough. Totalitarian regimes also engage in processes they refer to elections, but this does not make them democracies. Democratic elections must reflect core principles such as equality, liberty, and freedom of expression. And that is important because this relates directly to the sources upcoming surrounding elections. Full political rights for Jews only in the entire area. All the Jewish citizens who live between the Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea can fully participate in Israel's general elections. They can vote, run for office, and promote their agendas in various ways. They can be elected for parliament and serve as ministers. Currently, about 10% of all Jews living in the regime for which the elections are held reside beyond the Green Line is more than 200 settlements built for the West Bank. Thanks to the legal framework Israel initiated, their rights to political participation remains untouched, despite living outside Israel's sovereign territory, and they can vote and run for office like all Jewish citizens living in the Green Line. Settlers are not even required to cross the Green Line and enter Israel proper in order to vote. As far back as the early 1970s, the Knesset amended the law to allow citizens to vote in settlements. Polling stations are made available throughout the territory in Israeli regime controls in the Jewish settlement in Hebron and Ramat Aviv and Avil, and in Nof Hagal, in Haifa and Jaffa. The Central Elections Committee website displays results in all polling stations. These stations in our settlements appear on the same list as those west of the Green Line, one regime throughout the whole area. Less political rights, if any, for Palestinians only in the entire area. Palestinian subjects living under occupation in the West Bank and Gaza Strips cannot participate in elections. Roughly 5.5 million Palestinian subjects live in these territories occupied by Israel in 1967. About 3.5 live in the West Bank, roughly 350,000 in East Jerusalem, and some 2 million in the Gaza Strip. None of them are allowed to vote or run for the Knesset. They have no representation in the political institutions that dictate their lives. This reality persists despite the fact that Israel has been the sole power controlling and managing these millions of lives for more than 55 years. Israel controls the land, sea, and air spaces, and has retained key governance aspects despite geopolitical changes over the years. Israel cities those changes to support its argument that residents of the occupied territories can influence the future through other political systems. The Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas regime in the Gaza Strip, yet this claim is detached from reality. And this highlights the issue. The issue is this: discrimination, as defined here. Systematic discrimination against Palestinian citizens of Israel, which I will scroll up in a second to show. As part of an effort to maintain Jewish majority created by the expulsions of 1948, Israel passed a series of laws to limit the growth of remaining Palestinian populations and their towns and villages and marginalize them politically. Today, there are 160 laws that discriminate against Palestinian citizens of Israel directly and indirectly based solely on their ethnicity, impacting virtually every aspect of their lives, including housing, employment, education, healthcare, and who they can marry. In 2018, Israeli Knesset Parliament passed a Jewish nation-state law as one of the country's quasi-constitutional basic laws. It was widely condemned as racist and entrenching apartheid in Israel. Alongside other things, it declares that the right to exercise national self-determination in the state of Israel is unique to Jewish people. The state views the development of Jewish settlements, segregated housing for Jews only, as national values and will act to encourage and promote its establishment and consolidation. Israel's basic law also bars political candidates and parties from advocating a secular democracy in which all citizens are fully equal, regardless of their religion, ethnicity, by law, for an end to Israel's system of Jewish privilege. In 2018, legislation called for Israel to become a state based on full equality of citizens introduced by the parliamentarian citizen of Israel banned by a committee to prevent even being debated by Knesset. A Knesset legal advisor explained the bill was rejected because it includes several articles which are meant to alter the Charter of the State of Israel from the nation-state of Jewish people to a Senate in which there is equal status from the point of view of nationalities for Jews and Arabs. And as I say, let's scroll up to see the citizenship stuff. They are a thing, as you can see, but not everything as lucky as we'll get into the next point. There are 1.9 million Palestinian citizens of Israel as of 2019, comprising 21% of Israel's population. 83% of Palestinian citizens are Muslim, 9 are Christian, 8 are Druze, according to the most Palestinian citizens of Israel live in 3 areas: the Galilee in the north, the so-called Little Triangle in the center of the country, and the Negev desert to the south. There are more than 63 laws that discriminate against Palestinian civilians of Israel. There are 70 homes of 2020 that belong to Palestinian civilians of Israel that are threatened with destruction by the government because they were built without official permission, which is extremely difficult for them to obtain. The reason why this is super important as well is because of the stuff around here. The Israeli government directly controls 93% of land in Israel and systematically discriminates against Palestinian citizens in Israel in its allocation. Although official agencies like the Israel Land Agency and and quasi-governmental Jewish National Fund, combined with the discriminatory administration's community law, and approximately 80% of the state lands are off limits to Palestinian citizens of Israel who face similar legal obstacles, is gaining access to this land for residential, agricultural, or commercial gains. For example, basically, in a nutshell, there's a lot of restrictions as a whole. For example, to continue the point, the so-called Nakba bill, passed in 2011, bans public funding for institutions and governments involved in activities commemorating the expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians during Israel's establishment as Jewish majority state in 1948. In 2014, the Knesset passed a law distinguishing that Christians and Muslim Palestinian Arabs, citizens of Israel. They claim that Christian Palestinians in Israel are not, in fact, Arab, part of an effort to divide Israel's minority Palestinian population. This despite the fact that all Christian Palestinians are Arabs and consider themselves to be as such and have long formed an integral part of Palestinian society. This is a good example of what we are talking about here. The reason why this is important is because of this article as well. Just 5% of Eastern Jerusalem Palestinians have received Israeli citizenship since 1967. Only 5% of Palestinian residents in East Jerusalem, and to remind people that it's supposed to be the capital of Palestine as per the two-state solution, 18,982 people have gained Israeli citizenship since the city was reunified in 1967. The figure comes from a response by the Interior Minister. Only 34% of nationalized applications submitted to the Palestinians living in East Jerusalem are approved, and in many cases, approval takes years. The lack of Israeli citizenship has many implications without it. East Jerusalem Palestinians cannot vote in Israeli elections or obtain an Israeli passport. To travel abroad, they must apply for temporary travel documents. Some jobs are not open to non-citizens. Most importantly, their residency status can be revoked, unlike citizens. This has happened to over 14,000 Palestinians since 1967, mostly due to information showing that the center of life was not in Jerusalem. With the loss of resident status, they lost their health insurance, livelihood, or even their right to enter Jerusalem. And that's what this impact is. So you can see now why that there's a disparity between those wanting to basically die in Gaza now versus those wanting to leave. They can't go to Israel because of these restrictions and how there's such punishment for being Palestinian. And the rate of success is low. And on the other end, if they flee to other countries, there's no security as well. And that's where it makes the issue of a potential ethnic cleansing of genocide, which the IDF can do in light of the incidents. To further highlight this issue, the Washington Post said in 2019, Israel's population, whom the government labels as Israeli Arabs, are considered separate from the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Refugees in the diaspora. We hold Israeli identification cards and passports, while West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem residents are connected to Israel's permit regime. As far as Israel is concerned, Palestinian refugees, many of whom are forcibly flee their homes in the 1948 war, have no connection to land. Though this false classification, Israel can continue to refer to us as a minority, even though Palestinians are a demographic majority between the Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea. And that is because, as mentioned before, many are not given any rights as citizens. By giving only a certain class of Palestinians the right to vote, Israel maintains a veneer of democracy, even though more than 75% of Palestinians who live under the varying degrees of its rule are disenfranchised. Despite this hierarchy of status, the state views all Palestinians as a threat both collectively and as individuals. It treats Palestinians with similar policies of discrimination and dispossession, including house demolitions, confiscation of Palestinian lands, and police brutality regardless of whether we are citizens. How it also says here, which is also quite a showing of statement, is here. In modern nation states, citizenship is a privilege and right to vote in democratic elections, even more so. Millions of stateless Palestinians can attest to that, but without disputing the power imbalance and challenging Jewish supremacy, participating in the legislature could lead to very limited narrow improvements at best. Only once the international community holds Israel to standards of international law will a step in the direction of justice and full equality be possible. Parliament has rarely, if ever, been in a place where the powerful voluntarily cede their superiority. It's time Palestinians see beyond their confines of second-class citizenship and break from the shackles of Israeli engineered separation to imagine a future in which we are free in practice, but not just theory. For example, here in this as well, let me try and find it quickly. It talks about the law. For example, in the shadow of an Palestinian election victory looms a truth as old as Israel itself. In a system built on Jewish supremacy, on one group's uncritical abuse of power over others, those who demand full equality have negligible political weight. The joint list amassing more members in the next Connect is a fleeting, even misleading success, no matter the turnout rate, no matter who ends up forming a new government. After all, last year the Connect passed the Jewish nation-state law, a racist bill that enshrined Jewish superiority by claiming that only Jewish people have the right to self-determination in Israel, and the Palestinian territories promoting Jewish settlements also on occupied territory and abolishing Arabic as an official language of the state, even with the most ever Palestinian representatives sitting in parliament. And that's also where, for example, when you say Israel has the right to defend itself, or Iceland or Israel, you're ultimately endorsing the Jewish nation-state law, in which you are actually advancing for a apartheid and ethnic genocide. And that is why this issue is really important. And that's why you should not sit back lightly.